Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is longtime listener, poet laureate, and Taya master Anne-Marie Young. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Our friend Louie can't be joining us today, but it's so good to have Anne-Marie back because we've been missing her for the last couple of weeks. And Anne-Marie, it's not been the same without you, so we're glad you're better and you're back and able to do this again.
It's good to be back. Thank you, Walt.
Oh, definitely. It's great to have you. And we're going to have some fun today, by the way, because we have a guest who she likes to talk about the same kinds of things we often talk about here on the show. So there's going to be a lot of synergy going on. She also has a quote that she likes to share. She says, "Don't let a good tragedy go to waste." I mean, that sounds a little familiar, don't you think?
That sounds perfect. We've heard that quite a bit.
Just a few times. Yeah, just a few times. So. It is. It really
feels
is.
like there's constant tragedies when you're building a business sometimes. So you gotta not let that go to waste. That's for sure.
So anyway, her name is Stephanie Fee. She's from NOC Sustainable Wellness, and she's got her own story to tell and some others too. So we're looking forward to it. Stephanie, thank you for joining us today. And how are you doing down there in sunny Mexico?
Mexico is great. I'm happy to be in your daily dose of happy. I love fun, so looking forward to this conversation for sure.
Yeah, we are too. So tell us a little bit about how you ended up doing this, because it's not something that everybody does, but you've kind of taken it on as a passion.
Yeah, that's right. It became a passion of mine because I went through it myself. So I was working a lot, overdoing it for basically my entire life. And at 35 years old, I'm now 43. I had my own version of burnout, which was exhaustion, a divorce, literally was hungover on the floor. It was Easter Sunday. Of 2015, and I just realized that I had been striving so hard for outward success that I left my health and wellness behind. So I kind of went on a pathway to do something about it. I'm a person who likes to do something about things that I complain about. I don't like inertia, so I got myself up off that floor and took a good look in the mirror, many good looks in the mirror, and made some significant changes in my life, which helped me drastically improve my health and well-being inside and out.
A lot of people have encountered, I think that's part of why we live this life. I mean, it's taking me a while to come to that viewpoint, but I now fully accept, we come to this life in order to exactly do that, to deal with that kind of stuff when it comes along. And it's going to be different for every person. It's going to be a different kind of crisis, different kinds of trauma, all that. But it's like your quote says, I mean, that's where we do our growing, which really pisses me off sometimes, but really that's where we do the growing.
Yeah, lately I've been like, can the lesson stop just
right.
I would really like a break, universe, but it doesn't seem to want to give me one.
There's the character in the Ted Lasso Apple series, the television series, who played a psychoanalyst, psychotherapist, and she says, the truth will set you free, but first it'll piss you off. And I heard that, I said, oh man, that really says it.
That's so true.
So true. Yeah, I tell my clients that all the time. I'm like, I'm so sorry, but I have to tell you the truth.
And not only our own too. I mean, sometimes we have to deal with somebody else who's going through something like that too. I mean, I personally had to just deal with it today with an ex-employee of my company because she was just going through a really hard time because she's up against something. And, it's just, it can be really, really rough. The way you told it sounds like you managed to kind of like bootstrap it and get yourself going. Most often people look for help, but were you able to do it yourself?
I was fortunate enough to have a lot of tools in my past. When I was quite young, I worked for a great company that immersed us in self-development. So I had that base. I just lost it in the wine and spirits industry. That industry is as you can imagine, copious, consistent consumption, not just of alcohol, but also food. And I was traveling up to 90% of the time. And yeah, a lot of my struggles were around my body image and weight. And I had always struggled with consistency. So I did a lot of diets and, quick fix programs. So when I got up off of that proverbial floor and started going, where can I go? What would work for me? I couldn't find anything, and that's how businesses start, right? There's a problem that you have and you can't find a fit because nothing seemed to be focused on long-term results. Everything seemed to just be another thing that was going to exhaust my energy, restrict food, make me miserable for a short period of time, get the results, and then it all comes back again. And then you forget because all you can think about was that one time that you were successful before it all reversed, and you just keep going back into that cycle. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew that I needed to break myself of that. And also, I did bootstrap it. And I think that's kind of like part of why I'm here is that, there's something in me that is kind of like, you can do this. And I was sort of born with that. So I knew I could figure it out. But it took me a lot longer than I wanted to take other people. Right.
That's a blessing, though, that you were able to do that you felt you had that reserve in you, so to speak, that you were able to just draw upon. That's not something everybody can say. So, I mean, you should be proud of that.
Thank you. And I am, and I can finally say that. I can finally say, yeah, thanks, Walt, instead of like, no, Yeah. I say that because, a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit for their own strength and what they know and their wisdom and their know-how. And while we all need programs and support, it's what's inside of you that makes the difference, because you can get any program, but it's how you work it, and that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah. What actually did
that's
work
a really
for you?
good point.
It is a good point.
What worked for me is it's actually very simple. The company as it stands has 3 pillars: thinking, consumption, and movement, for a reason. I really had to start with the way that I was thinking about change, and unwind my mind and rewire my brain. And so did a lot of meditation and a lot of different healing techniques, and figured out how to, pause, because I'm a fast mover and I was very, reactive in so many ways when I was stressed. So I had to work that out of my system in order to then understand what was going to be healthiest for me, and as far as like what I ate and how I move my body. And I decided that it was the things that I love in moderation. Even movement. I would run marathons in the worst shape of my life,
Oof.
because my mind was like, you can do it. And I would just burn my body out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I need to understand the threshold. Like when you just can't withstand that much, intensity. So yeah, there's a lot packed in there, but really, how was I thinking? What was I consuming? And not just food, but like information and, language or things people would say, and learning how to let that all just kind of go like this, and pay more attention to how I was living my life.
Yeah.
When you pay attention, then you're like, it's astounding what you learn.
Frightening at times.
Yeah. That's why people are so afraid of it. Right?
Yeah. It's frightening, and it's. I actually recently had a moment just over the weekend, in fact, where something that I really need to work on and that I am working on kind of came home for me in a big way that said, this isn't going to change until you change. And
do you want to share what it is, or?
I'm not ready to yet, because there's a whole story that I'm going to bring into the show at some point, but cool. It's still playing out, so I'm ready to bring it in. Yeah.
Great. I can't wait to hear it.
But it's just, when that hits you between the eyes, it really hits you.
Yeah. And it doesn't stop. And that's the thing also that I had to accept was that, like, this is life. Life is not linear. It is not, this one big arrow up. There's just a lot of ebbs and flows, ups and downs, breakthroughs, breakdowns, but it's learning how to, like, be more buoyant, resilient, but buoyant too. Like you kind of bounce back up or you float back up rather than, like, bust your bones and crumble and lay there for a really long time.
Which is easy to do, by the way. It can be done.
It is. And it's not, I mean, we all have those moments, but I've come to this place where, like, I don't think that my role in this world is to be some sort of picture perfect health example. My role is to be real and to say, like, I still go through times, there's always another layer of, like, our health and wellness to sort out. There's always something. So yeah, I like to be really, really real about wellness. I'm not like a Zen master. I'm not a yoga teacher. I taught myself how to meditate and I work with other people on that, but not from a place of being a guru or an expert, but from a place of actually being like them. Like, I am you. You can do it. It doesn't take a bionic human being.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, you're actually a human.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because when I'll tell people, like, I'm like, sometimes I drink too much wine with my friends because I'm having fun, and, like, yeah, it's not good. I know it's not good for my health and wellness. And I don't mean to come on here and, like, scare you guys, like, whoa, what a fraud. But I'm being real, sometimes I eat Doritos, whatever, right? Like, I'm not here to be perfect. I'm here to be human. But most of the time I don't, most of the time I take really good care of myself.
See, I would disagree in the fact that, going out with your friends and having a little bit too much to drink and eating those Doritos, they are good for you. Those little moments are good for you.
That's right.
They're good for the soul.
Yeah, and I mean, to each their own, so I'm like, do whatever you want. If you want to be a vegan and not drink alcohol, kudos to you. That's amazing. Are you happy doing that? Does it feel good? Great. And sometimes I'm going to eat Doritos. Yeah, totally.
I just know that a night out with my friends just recharges my batteries, and it's not something I do all the time, but so that's why I think it's good for me. And yeah.
Well, and I worked with Italians for a really long time, right? And their way is like, and then they'll talk about, blue zones or something. So one of the blue zones is in Italy, and they talk about, like, well, it's wine, it's this. And I'm like, it's all the things. It's community and socialization. And that, you're totally right, Anne-Marie. It's like, that's an element of our health and well-being.
Yes.
Is social, relational, Yeah. We don't have to think so hard about, I feel like when I was overthinking everything I ate, everything I drank, putting, like, so much pressure on it, it did the opposite. It was like too boxed in, suffocated. So
I think I can get that. You talk about wellness, but you also use a particular keyword. You talk about sustainable wellness.
Yeah.
And that, obviously, I mean, we can kind of tell just from what you've told us so far, that is a big piece of it. But what does that mean to you? What is sustainable wellness? That
it lasts, that it never ends, that there's things that we can do that, the thing is people are like, drinking water is not sexy. It's not, like, hyped up enough for them or something like that. But for me, the biggest support that I have are my sustainable habits. So, like, taking a walk, doing a 5-minute meditation, the simplest of things, stopping for 1 minute and having silence, drinking ample water, having fruits and vegetables. Like these are my own sustainable habits that I know that I can do no matter what. And everybody kind of has those. Once you identify those, it's like, we call that middle line, there's like the breakdowns, then there's like this through line, and then there's these breakthroughs. So we're either up here or down here. That's where we want to be all the time, right? Because it's filled with emotion. And I'm like, no, we want to spend the majority of our lives in the middle, sustaining. And you can strive harder. Maybe you get some results, but then you go back to that sustainable line to help support you,
So it sounds like the sustain part sounds like it's two different kinds of sustain. It's being able to sustain your practices, and it's also being able to sustain a level of health that you're looking for.
Yes, because like as far as even, if we take weight loss as an example, right? The odds are, it's awful. Like diets, and I don't blame diets. It's just they're not designed for through a long-term lens. They're designed for a short-term result. So what's after that program is over is huge, right? And for the first time ever in my life, I've weighed the exact same for, I think it's been 7 years now.
Wow.
And it was always like fluctuating up and down. Like I didn't know how to stay consistent because I like change and stuff too. And I love to strive. I love doing something hard for, a short period of time. But not with food and that's all in the past. Like cutting everything out and stuff like that. If I cut something out, I don't think about it so much. It's just because I don't want it, But so anyway, yeah, it's with that level of consistency, there's some resilience there, right? That's built up.
Well, plus you were starting to identify something that I think is a pretty important topic: the difference between denying something of yourself that you would really like to have and taking it away because you really don't want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's in my experience, and this is what, when I work with people one-on-one, like, what are you reaching for? Like, really, what are you reaching for? Not just in this moment, but what's beyond that. And sometimes I look at something and I'm like, I don't want to drink because it's going to mess up my sleep. And I have something important to do in the morning. I'm reaching for a great morning. I'm reaching for, whatever, body I feel really happy in. I'm reaching for, right? You can use that and to direct, your own kind of arrow. So it's like mini outcome based, all the little decisions are like, I always say they're like micro transformations. Like you don't even know it's happening. Mm-hmm. But in every little decision that you make, it's like an average. And so, I'm always like, if I'm making about 80% of the time, pretty strong, healthy decisions for myself, like I'm doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was like tying it up with, what do you really want? And usually it's like just, the short term fix is just, it's just a matter of training your brain to think about.
It's a question that we all could stand to ask ourselves more often. What do you really want? Because I think a lot of the time we don't really know.
Yeah. And sometimes people say, oh, I want this, but you don't, if you don't want to do something about it to get there. And that's okay. If you don't want it, you don't have to want it, but if you say you want it, but then, you don't want to, if you say you want to have a great night of sleep, but, you want to drink 2 bottles of wine before you go to bed, then you don't really want a great night of sleep. You chose something else instead. What you wanted was the wine.
So it's about being clear about what your wants are.
Maybe, yeah.
I think we also put a lot of pressure on ourselves in that we'll say, oh, well, when I'm this certain way, I'm going to be happy. When I get this job, I'm going to be happy. When this happens, when I, get a boyfriend, I'm going to be happy. And actually, you're absolutely right. It's celebrating those little things. Okay, so today I just didn't eat any fried food. Today I didn't eat any chocolate. Today I drank water. Today I got out of the house and went for a walk. Just celebrating those little wins and feeling good about yourself in that moment. And that makes that difference.
Yeah, for sure. And like even in our communication with other people, little wins like that sort of creates like I feel like everything we do all day long, it's all connected, right? So it's like, how did that conversation go? It went well. I feel proud of it. I venture to guess, and or at least in my own experience and what I see from other people, is something like that. Then when you go to a meal, watch how you behave. If you had a stressful conversation, then you go to sit down at the table, watch how you behave, right? It all is connected. So it's like, and it's all kind of, stress related and things like that. But yeah, behavior, just all day long, it matters. I'm not saying to overthink it. I'm saying just notice, It's an interesting thing. Like my whole life changed, everything changed. And my life was like good on so many levels, in terms of like, friendships, and I was doing so well at my job. But then once you get better, you get better. Then it's like, whoa, I could never go back to that space where I felt defensive inside or reactive inside, because I hardly ever have to worry about, very rarely do I have to worry about myself in a bad conversation. I can walk away and it doesn't affect me poorly, because I did good. I don't know. This is going in a totally different realm, I know, but
that's all right though. That's what we do a lot. We go down rabbit holes. This is a good one. One of the things that I'm thinking about is how what we're really talking about here is what happens when you're living outside of comfort zones. And so often people choose to stay within comfort zones, even if they're uncomfortable, which they often are actually. But nevertheless, either way, it's a habit. Most often people are either habitually in comfort zones or they're habitually outside. And if you're habitually outside, that's when all kinds of things happen. Good, bad, and different. It's just stuff happens. When you're inside, everything kind of just stays the same for quite some time. So it's a complex subject, and it has a number of different possible impacts on the way we perceive our lives, the way we live them and experience them. And everybody looks at it differently. So when you think about comfort zones, how do you think about it?
Oh, I love this, that you brought this up, actually. So here's how it started for me. If I really think back, and I haven't thought about this actually, so this is kind of cool. There were little things that I decided, I was like, I'm going to do that the harder way. Like, I'm going to park a little further from the grocery store. I'm going to take the stairs. I'm going to, carry that heavy thing myself. I'm going to do some little actions that would kind of stress me more, like in a good way, right? And then you're like, oh, I did it. Oh, I did it again. Oh, and then it becomes like a habit, like you're saying, where you're used to something not comfortable on that level. And, and again, this is all kind of like, I'm just now thinking this through, but then, perhaps that leads to, I can be in any uncomfortable situation. Throw me in anything, right? And I think it's like there was a training ground that I put myself in. And I think it was actually my ex-husband who started it, because he would tell me, we lived in Chicago, and he would say, let's walk to wherever. And I would be like, oh, walk. And usually I had like shoes that I didn't want to walk in or something. And we would walk and walk and walk. And I'd be like, I thought you said it was just like 3 minutes. And every time we went somewhere, he'd say it was around the corner and it was like 2 miles.
Yeah.
I realized that I really admired that about him because he would always he'd make it a little bit harder. Not in a bad way, in a good way. So I think that's kind of how it started.
Yeah, well, it's a form of challenging yourself, really.
Yeah. So, and then it gets, but life puts you in uncomfortable positions anyway. So it's like, you're going to fight it because you got to live in it anyway. And it's the more you try to escape it, the more it like traps you. So I find if I just confront it healthily and I'm like in it, and you can look at it, it's more powerful, you know?
It is. Well, I've also found that when I am habitually outside of that comfort zone, when the big thing does hit, it's a whole lot easier to handle it.
So true. Even with, you know, I don't really want to bring up COVID, but like that whole thing, I realized how grateful I was that I had worked on all of that because, I mean, it was hard. Yes. Like, all of us on some level felt suffering for sure. But like, I realized like I didn't lose myself in it. You know, I didn't lose my health and wellness. I didn't lose any of the results, nothing. And I was like so happy that I had put myself into a lot of discomfort. Yeah.
There were a lot of unheralded benefits that came out of the COVID period, and we've often talked about those on the show. But this is kind of one we haven't really focused on, which is what you brought into it kind of dictated what you brought out of it.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think that, that'd be like a whole experiment, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was a worldwide experiment.
I mean, yeah. And if I think about it, it's like I started, like, how many people started businesses in a pandemic?
Yeah.
I mean, I did. What? What kind of crazy people are we, you know? But I mean, that's when you're like, oh, I see there's an opportunity because I can do this online. You know, there's like, there started to like open up all these possibilities even in the midst of, like a pretty like horrific global, you know, tragedy.
But it was one of the things that's one of the things that we have identified in the previous shows that what came out of the pandemic that was good because people got creative. They got very creative. They wanted to be able to do birthday parties and celebrations of graduations and so forth. So they found ways to do it in the midst of a chaotic situation. I mean, and the creativity was astonishing. Some of it was really amazing what people came up with. I mean, they posted the videos on YouTube or TikTok or whatever and like, oh my God, that was fabulous.
Incredible. Did you see it was like a chorus line or something like that. It was like beautiful. Like they all got together on Zoom and sang songs. It was just like, you know, super, super cool. Yeah.
A lot of famous performing artists did concerts online and stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the learning too, like for me starting the business, it was like all of these courses and learning and everything ended up being free. And like, it was kind of amazing because there was so much access to information to help teach you just about anything. That's still the case, I know, but I didn't really realize that before because I wasn't, you know, standing still.
I think one of the most astonishing ones, this was a guest who was on the podcast in the midst of all that. She was a personal trainer, worked in a gym, and of course, she and all the other personal trainers couldn't do that anymore. She invented a way to do personal training online and taught other trainers how to do it. Like, whoa, I mean, there's an accomplishment right there.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really cool how so many people did things like that. Yeah.
Pretty remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
Anne-Marie, when you think about some of these things that we've been talking about, we're always talking about in terms of what we experience in our own lives and you know, the lives of people that are close to us and so forth. But when you think about this whole idea of sustainability in the way that we do things, what jumps to your mind?
I think it's just celebrating your own little goals. So sustainability is find the things you actually enjoy that you can incorporate in a healthy way into your life and celebrate doing them. And that will then lead into you doing more. And you're absolutely right. Stepping out your comfort zone is so empowering, scary to do. But once you do it, you're empowered to do it. And then you're empowered to go that little bit further and that little bit further. And I think that's part of that whole sustainability as well.
It's a great point, because that sustainability is really what you're going to make of it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big thing that you've been talking about, Stephanie, that what are your choices going to be? And it's not like it's not like you have to follow these rules. These are the rules of how you become, that's not the way you're presenting it.
No, it should be your rules, your design, your life, your design. And that's part of it is like, we're living on someone else's system, right? It's like, oh, this works for me. And so I'm going to teach 10 people how to do this my way. No, I teach people how to do it their way. That's what, and NOCK is all about working with companies to do it their way as well, because a company is like a whole ecosystem in itself. And, it's like dealing with a person too, because there's unique, characteristics, and it's not a one size fits all. Granted, we have a really great framework, that's very simple to work within. But then outside of that, it's like, do it your way. Stop trying to grab an app and solve all your problems.
Yeah. So the company NOC Sustainable Wellness. Tell us where does NOC come from?
Yeah, I went to name the company. I wanted to be truthful. I wanted a one syllable word that, they say in business, then it's like you can kind of make it anything. Like think about like a lot of the, companies out there, like 1 or 2 syllable words. That wasn't really like attached to something necessarily, not like directly, like Stephanie's health and wellness coaching. I didn't want to call it something like that. So, I'm a Sagittarius, and, I love, archers and arrows. And I also like archery, and I dabble in adventure sports and things. So I remember that there was this step in archery called knocking the arrow, and that directs the flight path of the arrow. And so it's often overlooked in a rush to hit the target. That's like our health and wellness. So I thought it was a cool metaphor. And then I also thought it was a cool metaphor for a lot of the modalities that I've used, like mindfulness and silence, and, just like setting up that foundation. So that way this time, like for a company, as an example, they're struggling so hard with finding an effective health and wellness solution for their whole team, right? Struggling so hard. And then it's like, oh, let's try this. And then they're coming up kind of empty. And so with us, it's like, let's set this foundation and actually help you create a statement of sustainable wellness. It's a manifesto that gains trust and accountability and sets a stage so that then the tools you use, software does not matter if you have no base set up. Nothing is going to be sustainable if you don't knock.
I love that. Making your own life into a business case sounds just perfect.
Yeah, basically.
Well, it also makes sense that you want to build on a foundation. I love the fact that you used that word, because if you don't have a foundation, anything you build isn't going to stand anyway.
No, it's like, what does a house stand on? I mean, maybe that's cliche, but hey, it's true. Plant has roots. Where are yours? Where's your footing? Where's your grounding? And everyone's like, let's fix the burnout crisis now. Well, it's going to take some time. I'm sorry to tell you, but you will see results right away. You'll always see results right away, but, looking through a long-term lens, you really want to see what does it look like in 10 years, in 20 years? What are you,
Let's talk about it a little bit further, because I think it's an important point. So you want to build your own foundation. Like you said, you want to be thinking on a longer term basis. What are the fundamentals of a good foundation, especially for a sustainable wellness program?
Yeah. Understanding. So actually having an assessment, really knowing, and allowing that assessment to be anonymous, because you want people to tell the truth. So you truly understand, how is your team sleeping? And then what is their lifestyle like? With an acceptance of, at work, we are whole human beings, whether you like it or not. If you put your whole self, if you put, this part of your life behind and you go to work, is it really behind? No. You're carrying your stress from there to here in a heavy backpack that's oppressed, that's like suffocated. Why do we have harassment? Why do we have, ill communication at work? Why do we have all of these things? I think that it's because we're hiding too much of ourselves when we're at work. It's a fine line though. You can't also create a toxic familial environment or allow people to come in and use excuses all the time for, this is happening. And so, but it's not about that. It's actually transmuting, like taking all your stuff and making something of it. And if you have a culture of well-being, if you build that foundation, you know how people are sleeping, what their actual lives are like, then you can start to understand, okay, what organizational habits, and that's what we help leadership teams understand, what organizational habits can we bring in consistently for our team? Maybe that's empowering everyone to eat lunch. Because if you don't eat lunch, you go through the projects, you get to the end of the day, poor eating habits, maybe drinking habits, bad sleep, right? So sleep, lifestyle, how are people really living their lives? What are you doing within the organization truly to make that, so there's always friction between us and a habit. So how much friction, say you want to support people in having lunch every day. Well, how much friction is standing between, that habit and like, where's the gap? So then you can look at that gap and be like, well, every meeting in the company is always scheduled at noon or between those hours or whatever, right? And then you can start to say, here's how we can shift that as an organization. It's actually pretty simple. You just need the support, the framework, and, to get it done. But if we're like, you know what? Yeah, everyone eat lunch. But there's a whole bunch of friction. It's not going to be sustainable. It won't happen. And no one's going to feel like that you actually mean it because there's all this friction there that you're not willing to, close that gap.
This is a particularly interesting topic for me because, as listeners know, I run a gardening service, gardening maintenance company locally. And one of the big challenges I have, my gardeners are all part-timers. And the biggest challenge I have is getting them to take lunch. They won't do it. Mm-hmm. And the most common reason that they give me for not wanting to do it is, well, I'm only going to be on the job for 4 hours. I just want to get it done and go home. And I think to myself, how do I disagree with that? I mean, that they're doing what they need to do, so maybe insisting that they do lunch, maybe it's not the best idea. Maybe for their particular situation, it makes sense to do it the way they're doing. So that's what I've basically said, okay, you guys, you go the way you need to go.
Right. That might not be a habit that would be effective for your organization. Yeah. Or maybe there's more digging to do to, see what they're doing after work and how their habits are, right? And maybe that would then convince them, oh, maybe I could stop for 30 minutes. Who knows? But it's like it has to be also a fit and make sense for the company. And it's not a one size fits all. I mean, there's things like, practicing gratitude as an example. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much like, everybody can do that. And, That's actually that's what inspired the process for organizations. The CEO of Campbell's Soup, he took over Campbell's Soup in 2001. And he hand wrote, because a lot of the team didn't, speak English, or I'm sorry, they didn't have computers. He hand wrote like 30 gratitude letters and stuff every week.
Wow.
And completely turned Campbell's Soup around. And in 2009, he had an accident and was in the hospital and was receiving all of these notes of gratitude from his team. Oh. And when I heard that story, I was like, oh, that is so cool. We could stack one habit every quarter. You practice it together, creates a positive waterfall, like a ripple effect through the company. It's simple, it's fun, and like it's inspiring.
Mm.
So
and it's also a case of what goes around comes around. He kept putting it out, and then it came back to him in spades.
Yeah, and clearly he didn't even, he was doing it without also wanting anything in return.
Right, yeah.
And that's like what I think leading as a conscious leader and leading from a heart-centered place. I know logic is very important to employ. I'm not arguing against that. But when you lead with that kind of thing, like that's the leaders people want to follow. I mean, that's a story that you can hear in 2 minutes and be like, whoa, I wish that I had that kind of a leader at my company,
It's leading by example and understanding that little gestures have such big ripples in the community and just elsewhere outwards.
Yeah, I like making eye contact, I think is like a great habit. So when you walk by someone, you actually look at them. I mean, maybe it looks a little creepy. You're walking around your office and everyone's staring in each other's eyes, but no, for real. I mean, how many times I've been like worked at a gas station. I've been a server. I've been a hotel housekeeper, and I have had people that own the company or whatever. They just walk right by you. You're nothing. And then I've had them stop and look right at you, and you feel like something. You feel like you want to do really great for them, for this company, right? Mm-hmm. So even that is like, that's a habit. That's an organizational habit.
So what we're really saying then is that we get to choose what habits we're going to live by and adopt. We can change them to suit what needs to be done, what we feel needs to happen in our organization. And we have been talking about organizations, but really the same pattern also applies in personal lives, doesn't it? I mean, it's just a smaller organization, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how the company started, was with individuals. About 180 people went through different shorter and longer versions of the program that I had built. But then I realized, like, I just have such a passion for organizational wellness, because if I would have had that support, it would have been game changing, and then with everything that's happened over the past however many years, just coming to the surface, it's like, we need a different way to do this. We need NOCK to just change the whole. I'm not kidding.
No, I can tell. We may be laughing about it. You're definitely not kidding, however. Yeah, no
That's
doubt.
right. That's right. Yeah.
I'm also curious, though, how far do you think NOCK can scale in a company? Are there limits?
No, it's actually a really scalable model. So we have a three-part system. It's a highly, structured system, that's very scalable. So, and we have an app for the team individual. We'll be developing back-end software for companies as well, but now.
Oops, you just muted yourself. There you go. You got it.
My computer just gave me an alert that it's running out of batteries.
That's what happened. Okay. Yeah, they get hungry for electricity after a while. It's funny how that works. Oops, you're muted again.
Oh, It's all that talk about COVID, and the most famous saying of COVID was like, "You're on mute."
Yeah, I suppose so. That's true. Looks like you're still muted. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, I still think it's funny how we say the same thing still. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Oh.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, just like that Verizon commercial from
Right.
7 years ago, but on Zoom. Yeah. Anyway, no, I think it's a really serious issue that has to be solved. It's a problem that has to be solved. Workplace wellness. In all seriousness, it's like it's not changing.
You made mention reference a few moments ago to something, and I don't think you actually gave a label to it, but I'm going to give a label to it because I think it's a really important point, which is that anybody who comes into the working environment on any given day is bringing themselves with them, which means they're bringing all their stuff with them. Good, bad, indifferent, doesn't matter what it is. And we do in institutional settings, we do have a tendency to ignore or even deliberately cover up a lot of that stuff. But the stuff's still there. It's not like it went away. It's just, we're not going to pay any attention to it. Talk about what the consequences of that are.
Lawsuits, harassment.
Lawsuits, yeah.
Really? People constantly gossiping, constantly talking about each other behind their back, the interpersonal issues. I mean, at the end of the day, I believe what companies really want is they just want all of the behavioral problems to stop. And they're interested in health and wellness because of that. But it costs you a lot of money to just, expect everybody to house all of their stress and come forward in a healthy manner. I mean, some people are going to be better at it than others, but most people don't have like stress management training. Most people don't have that type of like work. So if you provide that for people, just, even like a breathing exercise that they can do before a meeting, that really helps alleviate some of that pressure that they might be feeling from home. One thing we do is, using a metric is very helpful to avoid getting into the story too much, right? Because, you don't need to know every detail about each other's lives. That can, again, it can be a bit dangerous, So scale of 1 to 10. What's the quality of sleep, quantity of sleep, and doing that every day or at least once a week tells you a lot. Sleep will tell you a lot. So if people are not sleeping, they're having a hard time falling asleep, you as an organization can implement healthy confrontation practices, nonviolent communication, healthy confrontation, where like is work causing you to not sleep at night? What is it? Let's close that file so you can sleep. The number one thing you should be concerned about is if your team is sleeping, for sure. If they're not, you're in danger. Truly. People who don't get rest are not okay.
It's true.
And then maybe it's something else in their life, but at least you can say, how can we support you this week? How can the team, is there something we can take off of your plate if you're struggling with your sleep this week? And then it starts to be you can do that for each other.
I'm reminded of a situation. It's been a long time since I worked in a corporate environment. So this would be pretty much around the turn of the millennium. It was the last time I was working in a corporate situation. But I remember there was a colleague who I worked in the IT department. He also worked in IT. He worked on a particular software project that was a major part of their sales cycle. And he was not getting rest. And it wasn't getting addressed. And he ultimately ended up dying of a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a key player. So basically, the company lost a person who was key to the development of their sales. And
yeah.
They didn't address a situation that was evident. Everybody could tell. Everybody knew. It was so obvious he was just working himself to death.
Mm-hmm. Literally.
That's
what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do. And it just like it has to stop, really. And the amount of things that you can get done when you have good rest and when you get good at some of these stress management techniques and understanding the connection and relationship we have with time rather than time management. Okay, that's one thing. Sure, you need a calendar system. You need to be organized. Okay. What's your connection to time? Because you know the people that are always, this is how I was. I'm so busy. I've got this, I've got that. Out of breath all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is so bad for us. And when we connect to time differently, we use it more wisely.
Mm-hmm. Well, not just time. Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
No, I was just saying, I think as employees, we can just think about the little things also that would make difference in our day job. I mean, like last week, I wasn't very well. I was particularly frazzled at work. I was so busy. So I was just, do you know what? Can I not come to team meetings? Can I just clear my diary? Can I just do this? And just little things, like just so I know I didn't have to be in for a certain time to attend a meeting that actually I didn't really need to be there on. So just these little things that can just relieve some of that pressure, even for a week or two. It just gives you that little bit of breathing space, and it kind of gives you that rest that you're also mentioning.
Yeah, and meetings are a huge problem.
Yes.
Really, it's like, what are they there for? To get some stuff done, right? To meet, have some good communication, and to move forward. But it's like death by meeting. There's an old book called Death by Meeting, actually. But it's like when you do the math of like, if there's like 50 people in the room, and let's say their average is they're getting paid $75 an hour. Oh my.
It adds up.
Money you can save and like put that into something else when in these meetings that have that you don't need to have. Sometimes you really do, and they can be really, really great. But a lot of times it's like, if we have a meeting scheduled and there's not really, you know what, this week, there's no reason to meet. Let's cancel it so everyone can focus on sales, so everybody can focus on getting, their work done. Maybe you have a little free time too. Ever heard of it?
What a scary concept that is. Oh my God.
Yeah. So yeah, there's all these, there are these other, kind of, these tools that just working with what exists and making it better, It doesn't have to be like a complete, cultural change, right? It's like shifts until you get there. It's just the same as like,
micro steps. When you mentioned meetings, again, you're shooting me back to when I did work in the corporate environment, and I used to actually evaluate I worked in a number of different companies, mostly small ones, but there was also a large one that I worked in. And I used to evaluate the companies based on, among other things, how often did they have meetings? Because to me, there was an inverse relationship between the number of meetings and the success of the company. And the more meetings I saw, the more afraid I became. That literally became one of the main reasons why I would leave a company. I would see so many meetings going on. I would say there was actually one company I worked for where the company was doing so badly that, and the meetings were going on. The top person was doing meetings so often that it was crazy. I actually sat down one day and kind of calculated in my own mind, because I was the production manager, so I had a pretty good idea of what was going on with all of it. And I calculated how much work was coming in. I estimated what everybody was making, what the overhead was, all that kind of thing. And then I estimated how much time was being spent on the meetings. And I came to the conclusion that the business was going to close in 6 months. It took 7.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's really like if you started every meeting and said, okay, in this meeting today, we've got $20,000 for 1 hour.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with that? I mean, what can you do with that? Yeah. Yeah. I worked for, companies. It's just another meeting. In the wine business, really good at meetings because it's always like, and then we can taste wine.
And then don't forget that you have the meetings to prepare for the other meetings.
Of course.
To talk about the next meeting.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
It's just craziness.
Yeah. You need like boundaries. We call it the well meeting framework. You have to have, a framework that also is supported. You can have health and wellness infused in there too. We start meeting off 5 minutes or less, breathing technique. If people aren't comfortable, no problem. Turn off your Zoom. Maybe you'll come around sometime. And start it off with a bit of let's calm your central nervous system down too, so that people aren't anxious, wound up, combative, ineffective, and wasting time and energy in meetings also.
Yeah. There's the financial costs, but we really haven't touched on the psychic cost, the mental cost. To me, I think that's almost worse. I mean, the financial cost is excessive. I mean, it can get really, really excessive. But the way it plays on the minds of the people who are involved, you're literally can get to the point where you're just doing your whole day going from one meeting to the next. And you do that for even a week, you're going to burn out fast, really fast.
And you're also not going to remember it all. Because you're
not going to remember any of it. Yeah, it all blurs together.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have so many meetings, and every meeting is a bunch of follow-up, and then it just starts to completely the drain gets clogged for sure. Mm-hmm.
It really does. Have you ever dealt with a company where they were in such severe straits they needed I hesitate to say it, they needed a quick fix. They needed a way out of this fast because otherwise they were going to be in bad trouble.
Yeah, I left, and then every time I've left the company, it's been unknowingly on the precipice of either they go under or an acquisition or something.
I have a few of those.
I have a sixth sense or something, and I'm like, it's coming, because you can feel it. I mean, you just you can feel at that level when it's not sustainable.
But it's also really interesting how the powers that be in such companies are often in such denial about it. Like the one I mentioned that, I predicted they closed in 6 months and it took 7 months. I told my staff about it. I said, and I was jumping ship. I was actually recruited by a competitor, and I jumped ship immediately and went to work for the competitor because I could see what was happening. But I told my staff about it, before I left, and I even pulled aside the wife of the owner of the company because I thought she was actually out of the loop on it to let her know, you don't know this, I don't think, but you don't realize this, but your husband is basically setting you and your family up for a fall here. And it was really interesting how that played out because, she took that as me attacking him and her family, and they fired me the next day. And I said, okay, fine. I didn't care. I was out of there, and I said, I don't think you're going to be around in 6 months. And sure enough, they closed their doors, but they weren't ready to hear that. They were that close to failure and they weren't willing to hear it at all.
Yeah. And the thing, I mean, so I think something that I learned early on was, don't attach who you are, your identity to your company, because you're never going to be able to withstand the criticism, the feedback, the truth telling, if you think that it's all about you. And then it's you're going to take it all personally when it's not. If someone comes to you and says, I'm worried about this company, and you get mad, and I'm like, tell me more. What's concerning to you? Let's look at it. What do you think would, change it? Take your ego out of it. It's not you. You're not failing. The company is failing. That could be for a myriad of reasons. And that's the thing. It's like, there's so many reasons why, I mean, was it like 92% of startups go out of business?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, but yet people attach their own, you know, and do something like that. Like, we don't like what you said, so we're going to fire you, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's called
Your life.
stabbing yourself in the back through somebody else.
Yeah, and like, good luck getting through life in one piece, because
Right.
I mean, you walk down the street, you hear things you don't like. You know, the world isn't designed for you to just everything to be to your liking all the time. But when you have a business, face the music. I worked for way too many people who would not look at things. It was like denial central.
Right.
And I thought, I don't understand. If there's a problem, aren't you supposed to look at it so you can understand how to solve it, instead of completely, consistently just keep having that same problem? Same issues come up from all the people, say the same thing. It's years down the road, same problem. I mean, I talk to people back in the wine industry all the time, and they're basically like, nothing has changed. It's like days of our lives, you know? It's like, can pick it right back up. It's the same complaints, same with the companies I worked for. Man, at least, you know, I'm always like, give me new problems. I have the same problem over and over again. It's like, oh, it's the worst. I'm like, fine, give me new problems. Then at least you know you're activating, you're doing something about it.
But this is also tying into the thing we talked about before, bringing yourself with you. Because when you have the same experience over and over again, there's a common denominator in there. It's not fun to look at it, but that common denominator is yourself. And until you deal with it, it's going to keep following you everywhere you go.
Yeah. And I mean, when we bring our whole selves to work, it's like, who doesn't want like the mother of 5 who goes home and like kicks ass for her kids and like does all this stuff? Who doesn't want her around on your team? You know, who doesn't want like the guy who's taking care of his elderly mother in the evenings? You know, who doesn't want that guy around, right? Like, we do extraordinary things outside of work, and when we're treated like whole people, we bring that. We bring all of that. When we're treated like half of a human, or even just like a third of a human at work, we're not going to give that to you. I mean, that doesn't belong at work, because you don't hold a space for that. You know, work's not a container for that. I have to be a robot. I have to be this version of myself. But I don't know. For me, I'm like, I know everyone does like extraordinary things in their lives. They volunteer somewhere. They do whatever. Bring that, you know, and with it, you might have a bad day, and guess what? That's okay too.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think we have to be more, not condone, you know, catastrophic behavior, but like allow people to be crabby one day, have a bad moment.
Yep.
It's okay.
Everybody has their moments. For me, it's always, are they willing to own up to it? If they are, well, you know.
I think people do, though, more often when you do, right?
Yes.
It's like, I'll just say, hey, you guys, in this meeting, I don't know. Today, I'm in a weird mood. If I seem like I'm not in it, it has nothing to do with you. Don't worry, but just like, I'm just honest. So they're not looking at my face like, did we do something wrong, or is she about something? Yeah. And then that way I can get data back. So someone else will feel like they can just be like, hey, listen, don't need to go into it, but I'm not right today, you know? And then at that point I might say like, why don't you not even come to the meeting? For me, I have to. It's different.
As usual, we have flown through an hour and then some. I just looked up at the clock like, oh, okay, yeah. But there are a couple things we need to do before we close up for the day. First of all, tell people how to find NOC Sustainable Wellness. How do they find out more about what you're doing?
Yeah, knockwellness.com, and then we are on Instagram and LinkedIn, NOC Wellness, and there's links to schedule a consultation for our SWAS for organizations, Sustainable Wellness as a Service. So we act as your in-house wellness team. helping you implement our 3-step solution.
Okay, very good. And something that I like to bring in every time too, because people who come onto this program are givers. They want to help people, and they make it their careers to help people. And very often, just by doing a podcast like this, or maybe you post something on social media or whatever, you're helping people that you never even see. You don't even know what happened with them. But they consume the material and they got something out of it. And I don't think we get enough recognition for that. So on behalf of those people that you've been helping in ways that you don't know about, and you've never met them and you'll never see them, but you've been helping them, thank you for what you've been doing, because you are making a difference in this world.
Thanks for saying that, Walt. And thanks back. It's been really nice to talk to you guys. No, really, the more good we can do, the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie, I usually come to you to wrap it up. Tell us what's the one thing that's jumping out to you that jumps out more than anything else from today's conversation.
I think something that I found that will resonate with a lot of people is baby steps. Find the little things in your daily life that you can improve on, be proud of them, and build on that, and keep doing it. Have that sustainable wellness, but choose what you love to do.
Good stuff. All right. Well, Stephanie Fee, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing these very interesting insights. Really, really cool conversation.
Thanks for engaging in it.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. I'm so glad to have you back. Looks like we got your smiling face back. That's a wonderful shift. So keep that going, okay?
Thank you all. Good to see you too.
Good to see you too. All right. So we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.